Perfect. No news is good news. We'll keep going. Some of the tools that you'll actually see, you'll actually notice that the exercise materials in the Evaluator document section has a little tool or template that will walk you through the dates of the exercise, the DRO headquarters location, and then it goes into the division exercise team roster. So you'll notice that it calls for a lead controller, 2 evaluators, of which many of you are on the line, possibly observers. This is at the discretion of the DDE. I had my Division Health Services advisor come in last week in Iowa because it made sense for her to not only observe, but also to do some capacity building with the Disaster Health Services staff. So again, this isn't going to be something where we're prescriptive in saying, here are the number of observers. You may actually have fundraisers that bring in donors to observe the exercise as a great way to highlight our readiness and our ability to highlight the great work that we do in preparation for a disaster. DRO headquarters staff, when you look at the actual CONOP, these are your CONOP positions. Don't panic that it doesn't exactly mirror the CONOP. What we were trying to do is just bring back some memory around the need for IT support, planning, obviously logistics. When you look at operations, external relations, finance, and administration. This is just another example of the tool for regional play. I'm not going to cover these in a lot of detail because they're just tools or templates that you can download. Here's a sample exercise agenda so you're aware as an evaluator. We mentioned that we have to have a minimum of 72 hours of play, and I'll talk about why that's important for evaluating the DRMT here in just a minute. But this is just a sample. If you start on a Monday, you might start at 10 a.m. post-impact. The event might hit on a Sunday. DRMT comes in, travels by noon on Monday, and then you start the exercise by 4 p.m. These are all adjustable, not meant to be prescriptive, but just tools and templates that you can draw from as you're building out your exercise design, which is largely going to be done by your scenario planners and not by the evaluators. So let's talk specifically about your role as evaluators. Your role as an evaluator is simply to deploy to the headquarters and look at the following issues. Number one, really become familiar with the evaluator's guide and the DRO evaluation checklist. So you're going to notice one of the documents here on your screen, the very first document, as a matter of fact, is the evaluator's guide. Definitely download that, read it inside and out, because it's going to guide your play. And I'm going to talk about the highlights of that here in a moment. Also, you're going to be assisting the DEMG in proofreading the exercise materials. As they're writing the exercise, as an evaluator, you really need to become familiar with what it is that's being developed for the scenario so that you can evaluate against it. You'll be responsible as the evaluator for conducting the DRO hot wash at the end of the exercise play, as well as compiling those comments, and then also compiling all the DRO and district play following the exercise. Last but not least, you're going to assist the DEMG in finalizing the after-action report. As Eric mentioned, this is a substantial investment for our senior leadership team in Washington to invest in the DRMT exercises, and we owe it to them and we owe it to ourselves and the regions that we're playing with to really report back on what are some of the corrective action plans based off of the after action that we can develop into our training exercise schedule going into FY16, FY17. For those districts that are being stood up, I want to differentiate between the DRO evaluators, which are evaluating the DRMT, versus the district evaluators, which are evaluating district play. They're very distinct, different concepts and different players. So if we go back to this exercise roster, you'll notice again that we not only have a level of evaluation that's taking place within the DRO headquarters, but we also have district evaluation that needs to be built out if you are, for example, breaking up into 2 or 3 different districts. It would be impractical, especially if you're geographically separated, for you to be staying at DRO headquarters and to properly evaluate the play within the district if it's geographically located in a different building. In Iowa, we had one of the districts co-located with headquarters and another simulated about 3.5 miles away, which in reality was about 350 miles away. So there was a need for a separate set of DRO evaluators as well as district evaluators. The district evaluators are doing just that. They are reviewing the evaluator's guide and evaluating the play at the district level, consolidating that district hot wash as well as comments, and providing it to the lead evaluator for the exercise and the lead controller, which is obviously going to facilitate compilation into the regional after action report that's going to be evaluated after the exercise is completed. So as an evaluator, there are several things to take into consideration before the exercise. Review the guide. I can't emphasize enough, the guide is written for your use and morphing, and a good part of it is simply downloading it and taking time to read through the document. A good question from Susie: is that the lead controller for the district or the overall controller? That's the overall controller. So each of the district's evaluators will eventually send all of the components of their district hot wash to the lead controller of the exercise, so that there's one focal point for all of the information dissemination and all of the information collection at the end of the exercise. So for evaluation checklists, you'll see in the documents that there's a number of checklists that are meant for your use, and I'll cover some of those specifics here in just a moment. Before the exercise, you will be looking at the injects and the measles, which are the scenario-driven exercise injects. Please make sure that those aren't shared with any exercise participants. We're trying to keep somewhat of a surprise element to each of the exercises. That seems pretty obvious, but it becomes very easy at times to accidentally hit forward or to disseminate too much of the exercise injects, and then it ruins some of the evaluative criteria in which we're trying to lend ourselves to evaluate. An evaluator also is responsible for the participant feedback forms. So collecting those at the end of each exercise day, we do that on a daily basis so that it's fresh in people's minds, each and every one of the players for the exercise. And then the evaluator is also responsible for the hot wash briefing. So for those of you that are on the line, it sounds like most of you are DRO/DRMT evaluators. You're going to be collecting the participant forms and conducting the hot wash briefings at the end of each operational period. So before the exercise, a large part is attending the final briefing scheduled with your scenario planners after you've reviewed the injects and the measles. And during the briefing, you have obviously an opportunity to learn and question things about when people are going to arrive, the agenda, controller locations, and then specifically, you should know well in advance, well in advance, where your evaluator locations are going to be. There is in the exercise management team packet very loose timelines that will allow you to answer those questions 2 and 3 weeks before you actually arrive at the exercise site. And I do recommend that you actually print off that management team packet and bring it with you as an evaluator. That will dramatically help as you're going through the exercise objectives. When you're actually deployed and on the exercise, you're going to provide participants with the feedback forms. I mentioned that before, collecting them, compiling them, and then carefully monitoring exercise play. If you notice that for whatever reason there is some sort of wonkiness in the timing or the schedule, you can feed that back to the sim cell into the controllers so that they can either speed up or slow down exercise play. Completing the evaluation checklist. I went into my mass care mode here for your assigned area, and then obviously compiling all that so that it supports the development of the after action.